It's UofL Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. I'm Mark Hebert, that guy that you just heard in the intro. Glad you're joining us on this day. We've got an interesting show lined up for you today. And as I always say at the start of these shows, this is the show that's going to make you a little bit smarter and going to give you some great information about the University of Louisville that you can go brag about to all your friends. So hopefully by the end of this show in 30 minutes or so, you'll be a little bit more intelligent and have some tidbits about the University of Louisville that you didn't know before. So coming up on today's program, we'll talk to a new member of UofL's faculty who's doing some really interesting work in our oceans, testing whales, turtles, and more recently, alligators to see how they've been impacted by oil spills, pollution, and cancer-causing metals in the Earth's waterways. But first, you've seen all the ads for massage parlors and strip clubs in the newspaper or in Leo. It's part of the adult entertainment business. And a University of Louisville researcher has found that those ads and commercials spike in cities that are hosting big sporting events like the Super Bowl or the NCAA Final Four. Teresa Hayden is a professor of criminal justice at UofL, and she also has a degree in social work from the University of Louisville. And she's been doing that research on sex trafficking. Welcome, Teresa.
Welcome. Thank you.
Glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the work you're doing. In general, let's just talk about the sex trafficking research that you've done. Then we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty as we go along.
Okay. Well, I teach a course on human trafficking in the criminal justice department. And several years ago, I had a grad student who was very interested in human trafficking, did her internship here, and we did a lot of research together. Just looking at the Backpage.com ads, we knew that the commercial sex sales were promoted through that medium.
What's Backpage.com?
Backpage.com is an online site, much like Craigslist. It's open to anyone. It's very familiar to anyone who wants to pay for sex. And so they can go in there to the links and find the ads that they want. So what we did was monitor these ads during special events here in Louisville. The farm show, Derby, some of the things where we thought would really be attraction.
NCAA tournament.
Well, what we found out was that was a spike. We did not anticipate or monitor that. We just happened to have the data over 15 months. So we had some unexpected findings.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute, but go ahead and finish. I interrupted you.
That's
go
okay.
And finish overall, what's your research about and how you got started?
Well, the research is about, are these ads really happening here in Louisville? Can we say that it is sex trafficking? So what would we find? That's what the research was about.
Okay. And you had some grad students that were helping you with this, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how'd you involve the students in this? What did they do?
Well, the students actually collected the data.
Okay.
They went every day to the Backpage sites and actually monitored each of the ads for that day. They collected the data on the age of the participant or who was being promoted, photos, phone numbers, locations, in calls, out calls. We looked for all the terminology that we knew related to sex trafficking, and they recorded all of that. So once that was done, and there were several who were involved in that, once that was done, then I did the analysis with it, and then also had someone to do some geographic mapping so we could actually see site map in Louisville of where were the primary sites that might draw locations.
So people that would be looking to have sex, illegal.
Well, pay for sex.
Pay for sex,
yeah,
okay.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, I guess people looking for sex.
Right.
That's a little more general, isn't it?
Exactly.
Paying for sex, illegal, I guess.
Exactly.
Can go on this webpage
exactly.
and look. And so what did you find when you monitored that webpage around in Louisville, Kentucky, and folks from Louisville going to that page around these big events?
Well, what we found was the ads promoted, about 15% of the ads were directed towards selling a minor female, someone
Really?
underage. Yeah, that was very surprising to us and very disappointing because that is clear crime of sex trafficking. So there, someone was promoting the sale of a young teenage female. That we found that. We also found that the sites where they primarily were located, where the men could go and have the encounter, were out at Blankenbaker and Hurstbourne Lane. That was the number one site.
At the hotels out there?
The three hotels out there on a certain street.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Then we also found a lot of the other sites were around the airport, Phillips Lane, and then on Goldsmith Lane and Barstown Road.
But those were just the meeting places. They just had to find some place to meet,
exactly.
Right?
That's
okay.
where the arrangements were made. Yeah.
Okay, so you find that 15% were for young girls.
Young girls.
The majority of them were at these different motels around town, the meeting places.
Right.
But what did that tell you? What did you learn?
Well, what I learned from that was we could not definitely say it was sex trafficking. All we could say was the opportunity was there. Someone was promoting the sale of sex with a young female. I mean, it was very clear in the ads because the terminology and all was there. That was their purpose. The fact that they were minors is a clear indicator of sex trafficking because to Kentucky law and federal law both, anyone under the age of 18 who is exploited sexually in any way is a crime.
All right, we're talking with Teresa Hayden, who's in the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of Louisville. She's a faculty member and has done some studies and research on sex trafficking, as you've been hearing about. So you could only find that in make a direct tie to sex trafficking and human trafficking in those that were minors, that people are trying to contact minors, correct?
Exactly, because if they're an adult, we could not assume or go with the idea that that was a sex trafficked person. Although what we did know, the average age of entry into this exploitation is about 13 years of age.
Wow.
And what I've heard from women who have been caught up in that for years, they might have been pulled into it at 12 or 13, but at 27, 28, they're still doing it. So they are the prostituted women that we see quite often as adults.
And is that a large problem in Louisville, or are we talking a small number of young women that are perhaps being exploited, or what are we talking about?
Those of us who work with this and are involved in the community with it see it as a large problem for the simple fact that you're talking about minors. If you're talking about 15% of these ads, which averaged 55 per day, you're talking a pretty good number of young people who are being sexually exploited. The consequences of that are very, very long term. So we see that as a huge problem.
Let me move to just a one-off here. Those ads I talked about that you see on the back page of the Leo, or you see massage parlor ads all the time in the newspaper, those kinds of things. Are those the same as, and they have the same impact, or have you studied them, as this web page that people can go to looking to pay for sex?
We haven't studied those, but I do find connections for addresses, similarities among the ads of the way they're promoting. It's just a different media format of promoting the same thing. And if we were to actually study those and be able to get into them, I suspect we'd find the same thing.
I think most folks would say, playing devil's advocate here, most folks in the adult entertainment business would say these are adults. They can do what they want with their money. We're not running a sex trade here. We're not doing illegal prostitution. We're an entertainment business. What would you say?
I would agree with you. That's the reaction. I get that reaction also from law enforcement, from a lot of people who are saying, well, they make this choice. The fact of the matter that we learn is these women are not making a choice. Who would deliberately make a choice to go out and be beat up, threatened, have violence exposed to them multiple times a day? These encounters happen at a very young age. That's where our concern is, because the young girls get pulled in at a very young age and then they're trapped and they're stuck. In that sense, it's not a choice.
All right, we'll be back to talk a little bit more with Teresa Hayden here in just a minute. You're listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.
You know, the perfect bank should be mobile, not just online. It should have amazing programs for all your financial needs. It should be involved in the community, and you should be one of the owners. Actually, that's not a job for a bank. You need something a little different. Luckily, we're not a bank. We're so much more. And now we're the preferred credit union partner of the University of Louisville. Commonwealth Credit Union. Here, we see you differently. Visit weseeufldifferently.com for more information.
My name's Natalie. I'm a junior studying communications at the University of Louisville. U of L has given me mentorship opportunities. I'm in the honors program. I've had a lot of opportunities through that. I got involved in Greek life. I'm a Cardinal ambassador, so I get to show people what I love about our university. And then I'm also on the student orientation staff, so I get to work with the incoming freshmen and calm any of their nerves about college, and just show them my passion for U of L and hopefully transfer that to them. Family is really what it's all about here at U of L. Go Cards!
Welcome back to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. We're talking to Teresa Hayden, who's a faculty member of the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of Louisville. Let's talk a little bit about those big events. Derby, the NCAA tournaments when they come to town, Oaks. What is the impact, or what have you seen happen with those ads on that webpage that folks go to when these big events come to town?
What we know about commercial sex sales, it's a supply and demand business. So the demand is very, very high when you're going to have a time period where there are people who have just a lot of disposable income and really want to spend money at that time. That's why these ads spike during big events, because you have a lot of people coming into town with money they want to burn in their pocket. So the supply is there. They need the supply of women. They're even brought in from other areas. We can track it down from cell phones where they're being brought in from Florida, Pennsylvania, Las Vegas. There's certain routes that we can see where they're being trafficked. So at that point in time, they have to bring in women who are not local. And that's the draw around the big events.
And from your perspective, are these adult women that are coming in from other towns and even in Louisville for these big events that are essentially selling themselves, are they sex slaves, or are they just out to make a living?
I would say it's some of both. Some of both. Some of the women are actually trapped in as form of a slavery. But when you talk about making a living, once again, I go back to the point that these women have been pulled out of their normal life at a very young age. They've dropped out of school at 6th and 7th grade. So to be employed is practically impossible. They don't have skills. They don't have the education that can get them even a walk-in job at McDonald's.
Have you talked to some of these women that are perhaps between the age of 13 and 18? I mean, I kind of put the 18 and above in a different category than the 13 to 18, as you, I suspect, do too. Have you talked to any of those women that are teenagers and said, hey, why are you doing this? Or have they agreed to be interviewed by you or your grad students?
We are working with that group through some of the service agencies here in Louisville, through the detention center, because that's where we're beginning to identify them. These young women are being arrested for crimes that are not related to prostitution or loitering, but they're actually being trapped in the sense of that's kind of why they go out and do the drugs or why they might steal, that kind of thing. In that sense, we're trying to learn a lot more from them. I'm involved with researchers at Kent School of Social Work, and we've developed the Human Trafficking Research Initiative, and we're totally beginning to look at this issue and trying to identify characteristics among those young women.
All right, you just headed down that path, so I'll ask you, what's next? I mean, you've already talked about the research you hope to do next. What can we do, or those of us who are listening, to pay attention to this issue and to shine some light on this issue, especially these young girls that are getting in this business?
I guess what you can do is start believe it's real and start believe that it's actually happening here in Louisville. It's hard for us to think of that, but there are a lot of young people who just don't have the wonderful lives that we all do. And so for whatever reason, they run away from home. They're trying to get away from a bad situation. They get tricked into this. And so just be aware, recognize that this is potentially happening here in Louisville, and we have a big issue with it.
And if I'm at a hotel out in Louisville someplace and I see some 50-year-old guy walking in with a girl that looks like she's 13 and dressed perhaps inappropriately for a girl of 13, what should I do?
You might alert the clerks at the desk. And actually, we had a situation like this very recently. One of my former students in my course is working as a desk clerk at a hotel downtown. And she contacted me one Sunday afternoon, and she said, Teresa, I just know that this person is checking in here for this purpose, and she's a regular in here, and there are men going up to her room. So we followed the protocol that's necessary and contacted LMPD and had an investigation, and we're still working with that. But when you see some things suspicious like that at the airport, it's very common. That's why a lot of the addresses around Phillips Lane, the airport, I've been told that people might fly in the same day and fly out just for this sole purpose.
Really? To have sex in Louisville, Kentucky?
Yeah, it's just a high income, and they want their privacy. I like to say the poster child for this is Jared Fogle. And Jared had the disposable money and he could fly anywhere he want, be totally invisible with the process. And that's most likely who the buyers are.
Okay.
On the high end anyway.
All right. Very good. All right. Teresa Hayden, thanks a bunch for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. When we return, his entire family spent 3 summers on a sailboat testing whales for toxins from the explosion of the Horizon oil well. What's he doing at a landlocked university in the Midwest? We'll find out when we return. This is UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.
This is our time to soar. We are an unstoppable force of innovation and academic excellence, solving the world's mysteries through research, stimulating growth in our community and beyond, and inspiring the next generation of leaders to build a better future for all of us. We are the University of Louisville. Watch us take flight.
My name is Taylor Young, and I'm a secondary education major with a minor in Pan-African Studies. And my UofL is knowing that I chose to come to a university where there are so many opportunities. Some of the things that I have experienced here at UofL are being on the Porter Executive Board and also just singing in the Black Diamond Choir. My UofL is knowing that I'm continuing a legacy that my parents set out for me when they both graduated from this university. And my UofL is always being a Cardinal. Go Cards.
And welcome back to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. Sitting in front of me now is a guy who studies stuff in the ocean. That's why he's in Louisville, Kentucky, right?
That's right.
He's in a landlocked place. His name is John Wise. He has a special interest in how metals, pollution, and carcinogens in the Earth's waters are affecting sea life and what they might mean for those of us who are humans. John is in the School of Medicine's Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology, and he moved here last year from Portland, Maine. Again, that's a coastal town, and Louisville is not, John. So welcome to Louisville.
Thank you.
What the heck are you doing studying
Happy to
stuff in
be
the
here.
ocean if you're next to the Ohio River in Louisville?
Well, there's 2 aspects to my work. One is that we try to study how normal cells become tumor cells in people.
Okay.
And the Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology here is trying to build, an expert program in metal carcinogenesis like that. So I'm pleased and honored to be part of that. So that's a big part of our work. At the same time, we do study lots of critters in the ocean, whales, sea turtles, alligators. But even being in Maine, we weren't near all. There's no alligators in Maine, for example. So when we study alligators, we had to go all the way down to Kennedy Space Center. Or when the Gulf of Mexico spill happened and we went to sea, we had to sail all the way from Maine down to. So it doesn't matter where you are. The ocean's important to everybody. And you don't get to see it every day in Louisville. You do get to see the river, which is a
Well,
nice
I wish
view.
we saw it every day in Louisville, but that's not how it works here.
It's true. No, it's true. The nice thing about Louisville is it's easy to get anywhere. So in a lot of ways, Louisville's easier for our work than Maine. In Maine, we were way up in the corner of the country, and it took forever to get anywhere.
So you got a good airport here, and you can get down to Florida. Or
Yeah,
Texas
good
or
airport,
wherever.
good roads. We can get around. We usually drive most places because we got to haul a lot of equipment.
So you talked a little bit about your research where you're looking for cancer-causing agents, I guess. What have you done in the past, and what are some of the things that you've done to try and find out what is in the oceans and how it might impact humans?
I think the 2 most, striking pieces that we've done in the past is we collaborated with a group called Ocean Alliance, which is a small nonprofit in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And they were undertaking a global voyage sampling sperm whales. So we did a global study of metal pollution in sperm whales, and we found that metals like chromium, nickel, lead, mercury, those are all metals. Mm-hmm. We found them in every corner of the globe. Even some of the worst levels were this small archipelago in the Pacific called Kiribati.
Well, that's pretty. You would think that's pretty remote.
It's pretty remote.
Why
Now,
is that having a bunch of metal in the ocean?
Exactly. Now we have a variety of ideas as to why, but we don't know why. So first of all, we all sort of think, of course, everything's polluted, but we really don't know that much about pollution, especially in the ocean. So we've been documenting just how polluted it is. I think the second really striking voyage we did was we went to sea for 3 months in the aftermath of the Gulf of Oil crisis.
The Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, the Gulf of Mexico.
Spill, the big oil spill.
Yeah, the big oil spill. We went down. We spent 3 summers in the Gulf of Mexico, and have been documenting that metals were part of that oil spill. I mean, everybody thinks about oil and hydrocarbons and things like that, but oil's also carrying carcinogenic metals in it. So we've been documenting that the whales there, which lived and played and ate right in the epicenter of that spill, have alarmingly high levels of metals in them.
And
in the end, whatever gets in the ocean is getting to us.
Well, that's my next question. So what does that mean? I mean, we don't get our water supply from the ocean. We get it from the Ohio River. So how's it impacting me?
Yeah,
Not that that's a whole lot better, but I'm just saying.
Well, there's two elements. We don't understand pollutants in the environment that well. So in studying how they're affecting whales in the environment, it's going to mean metals that are here, with things like arsenic and stuff like that. We have metal pollution in Louisville. It's going to give us some insights into how that's affecting us. The other thing that we've noticed with whales is some of the bigger, older whales have a remarkable low level of cancer rate. You would think, being so big and having so many cells, that they would have higher cancer rate because there's more cells to become tumor cells. Some whales live 200 years. They live a long time, but they have very, very low cancer rates. And we're thinking that perhaps to live so long, they've evolved ways to better repair damage to their DNA. So we're exploring that as well. So we may learn how to better conserve the oceans, how to better conserve whales, and how to better protect ourselves.
All right, we're talking with John Wise, who is with the School of Medicine's Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology. And as you've been hearing, he has a special interest in what's in the oceans and how it might impact wildlife and humans. In Louisville, Kentucky, you said, it eventually gets to us. Mm-hmm. How does that impact us potentially? Is it the fish we buy in the store? Is it the water supply? How might pollution out in the ocean impact us, or pollution in the Ohio River?
Well, the pollution doesn't start in the ocean generally.
Well, it starts on land, and
sometimes with the oil spill it does.
Right.
One of the things that I don't think that society thinks enough about is air pollution. We've actually been operating under the hypothesis that the whales are not being exposed to the metals through the water, but they're actually being carried to the ocean by the air. And there have been some remarkable videos out of, I think it was out of NOAA, showing how mercury emissions in China travel the globe and come all the way to the East Coast. And some of our mercury is not locally produced. It's carried by the wind here. Certainly the fish we eat, with that oil spill, that had dramatic effects on shrimp, on oysters, and things like that. I mean, Gulf shrimp was always something that was sought after, and now it's a little more questionable.
How did you get interested in this?
How did I get interested in this? Well, growing up, I just always had a fascination with animals and wildlife and things like that, and I carried that through my career. In fact, my mentor is now at Duke, and recently had me come give a seminar and explained how I came into his lab, and all I talked about was, can I do some things? Definitely humans. I do a lot of human work, but also could I also look at fish? And he told me I was crazy, but he talked about how proud he was now that we had shown so many problems in the wildlife.
And didn't you want to be a marine biologist or something? I think it's on your webpage.
I did. As an undergrad, I thought maybe I'll go be a marine biologist, but I ended up with 3 children and thought maybe. There's not a lot of jobs in marine biology.
Need to pay the bills.
I thought about being Jacques Cousteau. I'm pleased to have met his granddaughter and done some interviews with his granddaughter.
Okay. So what kind of research are you going to be doing here at the University of Louisville?
We're doing the same sorts of things. Our primary is working on how a metal called chromium turns a normal cell into a tumor cell by affecting DNA and its repair. We're also working with NASA using alligators as a sentinel species to try to understand climate change and how space flight might affect the health of the local ecosystem.
Around Cape Canaveral, I guess?
Yeah. They're sitting in the middle of it.
That's kind of cool. So what have you found? Have you done some research with the alligators yet?
We've gotten good at catching them and sampling them because it's a catch and release.
The release has got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we haven't lost any students yet.
Or arms or legs?
But we're still really developing the technology there and the practices there, so we don't have a lot of data. We have published our first paper showing that chromium can damage DNA in alligator cells. So we go down there, 3 or 4 times a year for a few days to catch alligators.
And you're taking students with you?
Yeah, we take Louisville students with us. We have another project in Puerto Rico. There's a small island called Vieques that, again, has a lot of important endangered species like leatherback sea turtles. And it has a really unique history in that for 60 years, it was owned by the Navy and used as a bombing practice site. In fact, they used to rent it out to allies like France would come over and practice their bombing in Vieques. So they moved all the people into the middle of the island and then bombed the outside of the island, which created a lot of metal pollution concerns. And it's an important nesting ground for leatherback sea turtles. So we're working with Fish and Wildlife there to try to understand what's happening with the leatherbacks and what's going on in the environment there. And then our new one that we're trying to launch is we're trying to go back to the Sea of Cortez in April to again measure pollutant levels in whales. We were last there in 2000. So this would then be 16 years later. Is it getting better or worse?
I know you mentioned lead earlier. You mentioned chromium and lead and arsenic and some others, and this may put you on the spot, and you may not know anything about this, but could the situation that happened in Flint, Michigan, happen here or any place else, or is that just an isolated thing that just isn't going to happen?
Yeah, I can't really comment on that because I don't know the Flint, Michigan situation well enough, but accidents can happen anywhere, and older stock housing and things like that, you can develop problems.
Well, in that case, it was, as I understand it, there's been tons and tons of news about it, obviously, is that they didn't treat the water correctly, and it eroded the pipes, which were made of lead. And, of course, then
leaches out lead.
Leaches out.
Well, I'm sure Louisville's got lead pipes in its system because it's too expensive to replace all the pipes, and the lead pipes were put in before anybody knew lead was the problem that it really is. And when I was a kid, we had leaded gasoline because we didn't understand.
Leaded gasoline, lead paint.
Yeah, everything. And that's part of the importance of the research is there are things that we do as a society because we don't know. And then when we know, we try to fix it. I think one of the remarkable things about the Gulf oil spill in the aftermath is a big source of argument in it has been were the animals actually exposed to oil. Now, you and I look at it and go, hello, we saw it on the top of the water. But the reality is nobody knows what there was before the oil spill. So you have no baseline to compare it to. It's remarkable to me that you would allow development somewhere and not, if it was on land, you'd have to have some pre-measurements so you could measure your impact. But out on the ocean, we don't regulate.
You don't have a standard. You don't have a floor to start with.
Right. So when a spill like that happens, the offending company is allowed to say, well, how do you know it was us?
Could have been something else 20 years ago. It's just laying around in the water.
Natural seeps in the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
Right.
Are you going to work at all and do anything on the Ohio River?
I hope to. I hope to develop some things on the Ohio River. We just got settled in and haven't had time to meet the people who are doing work on the Ohio and try to collaborate with them, and certainly would like to work on the Ohio.
All right, well, before I let you go, I got to ask you, what do you think about the city of Louisville? And you don't have to say all nice things just because you're here, but, I mean, honestly, you came from Portland, Maine, you came here, what do you think?
Yeah, well, and Portland's where I grew up, so for me it was home. I think the thing I tell people most commonly about Louisville is it's a remarkably friendly city. Everybody's pretty pleasant. People will stop and have conversations with you on the street. I drive a Chevy Volt, which is partly electric, partly gas. And I parked one Sunday morning, and a man in a wheelchair rode up to me and sort of waved at me, and I thought, well, what does he want? So I rolled down the window, and we ended up with a 20-minute discussion about what it was like to drive a Chevy Volt. I thought, that's a really friendly city. Yeah, I'd never seen him since. We like Louisville. We found it very friendly, very nice, easy to get around, comfortable to live in. And I think the other striking thing is it's so remarkably centrally located, so many other cities. You can really move around.
You can get anywhere. Yep, yeah. Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, everywhere.
Yeah, I went to St. Louis for a football game. I've been around.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
John Wise, welcome to the University of Louisville. Appreciate you being on the show. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, and as we always do at the end of a show, we always give a little tidbit about the University of Louisville to make you a little bit smarter. So we talked with Teresa Hayden from UofL's Criminal Justice Program a little bit earlier in this show. So we'll end with a little tidbit about the Criminal Justice Program. Did you know that U.S. News & World Report ranks UofL's online graduate program of criminal justice number 9 in the country? Top 10, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, all right, you can find the podcast of UofL Today with Mark Hebert on SoundCloud and iTunes U. Always thank you to Metro TV and KETKY for airing video of these shows. And also thanks to all of you for listening, and go Cards.